how to work less and get more done. This is a 10-minute tactical podcast. I'm your host, Scott Peckford. Each week, I share with you a tactic, tool, or a tip to help you improve your mortgage business. And this week, I'm actually working on a series of time management. And today's episode is really about a bedrock personal time management philosophy of mine. And I have used this planning tool dozens and dozens of times. At the end, I'm going to share with you how you can get a copy of it and how you can get some resources to help you actually implement this. But I've got to be honest with you that if you're most like most mortgage brokers, the problem is, man, you are so busy, right? You got so many things on the go, and you always feel like you have not enough time and too many tasks. And this strategy, even if implemented at 80% of your effectiveness, is incredibly useful. And it's not my idea. I learned it from someone else, and I have since adopted it and used it over and over again over the last probably 8 or 10 years since I learned it. And I want to share this with you guys today. All right, so let me just tell you a quick story first about where it came from, the idea, as well as I'll break down for you the specifics on how to do it. So I remember one time I was struggling with time management, and there's this website called clarity.fm. And if you haven't heard of clarity.fm, it was created by a guy named Dan Martell. And if you don't know who he is, look him up. And it allowed people to basically hire experts on different topics and pay them by the minute to ask them questions. And I've used it several times, once in order to do events, which maybe I'll talk about in a future episode. But this time I was looking for somebody who was good at time management and managing work-life balance, because I found this guy, his name was Josh Shipp, and I heard him on a podcast, and he had shared some amazing things on that podcast. And one of them was this idea of an ideal work week. And I was like, "Ooh, this is interesting." But like lots of people talk about that, but I'm like, why would it matter that this guy talks about it? Well, to understand this guy's backstory, he was a foster kid, bounced from foster home to foster home until he was 16. And he basically was on a trajectory for not a great life and not making a lot of great choices. But he ended up with one family that changed his whole life and changed the trajectory of his life. And so one of his things is he believes that every child is just one caring adult away from changing their entire life. And that he definitely experienced that. But here's the thing. So, okay, fast forward, he's having kids. He's like, I never had a dad in my life. I had these people that ended up adopting me when I was 16 or 17, and I have a very successful, thriving business, public speaking business. How do I manage my work-life balance? How do I keep my health in there? How do I keep my relationship with my partner in there? How do I have time for my kids? And so what he did is he designed this thing called the Ideal Workweek, and it was absolutely amazing. So I called him up and I paid him $10 US a minute to talk to him. And I'm like, "Okay, Josh, I got some things I'm working on. What do you suggest?" And so he broke down this whole Ideal Workweek strategy for me, and I have used it so many times. And so what I do, just to give you there's some resources you can get for this to help you, but I basically plan it the whole week. And there's a few questions you need to answer if you're going to do this. First is, when will you start your workday? So the first thing is, okay, if you look at your week, when will you start your workday? And when will you end your workday? That's another thing. And then the idea with this Ideal Work Week is that you know that you're never going to have a perfect week, right? But if you could have a perfect week, if perfection was possible, what would it look like? How would you fit in all the important things? If you step back for a minute, looked at your calendar, said, I'm going to go to the exercise, I'm going to make sure I do my prospecting, I've got time for my team meetings, all the things that you need, that you know that you need to get done. What would it look like if you put them in? Now, when you first do this, you may realize there's some things you got to stop doing. You may be like, "Oh, you know what? For me to have an ideal work week, I actually got to drop 20% or more of these things that I've said yes to so that I actually can create an ideal work week." And that's actually a really good exercise. But the first part of this is really just to think about, okay, if I could have a perfect week, what would it look like? Now, here's what happens to you though. You're going to design this perfect work week. It's going to have a start time and end time. It's going to have time for prospecting, underwriting, emails. Again, I'll show you a sample and I'll give you a sheet you can go through to help you with this. What happens is that you create this perfect week, but then all of a sudden one week you're taking 2 days off because you're going to do something with your family or your kids, or maybe you're traveling, or you're off the entire week. And so what I have found is that by designing this ideal work week, I at least know that when I'm in my office and I've got a normal week, I can hit this. The other thing I've started doing is creating themes. So some weeks I will do more podcast episodes. So I'll have a podcast week, and that allows me to spend more time on content. But in any case, what you want to do is design the perfect week as if you had the time to make sure that you could make these meetings, and you're still not going to hit it 100%. You're going to plan this whole thing out. And I like to plan it personally in a Google Sheet because I like to plan it there, and then I put it into my calendar. So this becomes like, think of it like your calendar is like the house and the spreadsheet is like the blueprint. So it's like, okay, I got my blueprint of what I'm trying to aim at, and I find it less distracting. I can kind of design it without all, and then I go into my calendar, I look at it, and I start putting in the time blocks and stuff. And so it's what it is like time blocking, but instead of thinking about it one day at a time, you're thinking a week at a time. And by thinking about it a week at a time, you can actually ensure that you hit all the most important things that need to happen during that week, whether maybe it's a date night with your significant other. All that stuff goes into this ideal work week: work, life, family, finances, all that stuff. And then you design this whole week out. And then your goal is to try and get as close to that, hitting that in the week as you can. I have personally done this for probably 8 years ago, I think is when I first talked to Josh. And I have done this, I don't want to say 100 times, because sometimes something will happen in life. So when I went from running a training company to running a brokerage. My Ideal Workweek, I looked at it. When the summertime came and I had some different, stuff going on in my life, I went back, I look at the Ideal Workweek, I change it all. It's probably at least once a quarter now that happens to me that I look at my Ideal Workweek and I rebuild it each quarter, sometimes more frequently. And what happens, it doesn't take that long once you've done it once. And then you go, okay, this is what I'm going to do this is going to do this. And then you can look at the entire week in a snapshot and then aim at it. Other questions you want to answer. So I already said a couple of these. One, when will your day start? When will it end? How many hours you want to work a week? So like the thing is, if you want to work less hours, you've actually got to build a container with less hours. The issue is that if you can just keep working all the time, then it's easy to, and it's always easy to find something else to do. So if let's say you're currently working 50 hours a week and you're like, Scott, I'd like to work 40, then I would design an ideal work week around 40. Or if you're working 40 and you're like, Scott, I want to work 30. Cool. Now, and on future episodes, I'll talk about strategies for helping you be able to free up some more of that time. But if you don't build this first, this is sort of like for me, it's the foundation of everything. I designed everything around this. And because it's going to either be yes or no, you're going to look at it and go, it's not realistic. I can't actually fit it all in the hours. Therefore, something has to go. Back to what I said earlier, you're probably going to have to chop 20% of the things you're doing that are not really that important in the grand scheme of things. So, and then the other thing to think about as a mortgage broker, is there going to be any nights you're going to work late? So I've got some friends that are very successful mortgage brokers, and they'll, like, for instance, one of my friends doesn't take any client meetings on Mondays. Mondays are just get everything done. And then Tuesday to Friday is when they do client meetings. And then other friends who will only work late Wednesday nights. So it's like my family knows if there's going to be late meetings, it's one night a week. It's not every night. I'm not, my phone isn't ringing. I'm dealing with stuff. It's like, hey, I can meet with you late, but it's going to be on this one night of the week that I've got planned. And so again, you put some structure around this, and it's absolutely incredible what can happen. Then, but to make this all work, the other key pieces, so I step back and next is what time do you wake up? Because if you don't wake up on time, you're not going to be able to get to your desk at time. You're not going to be ready. And then the whole thing's going to unravel, right? When are you going to do your workouts? If you're going to exercise, you should be hopefully doing something. If you have a mindset practice, I have a mindset practice that I do daily and just slightly different one that I do weekly. And, again, if I want to show up the best version of me, I gotta bake that in. And then there's a few other things that you want to make sure you do. But the whole idea is that you design this week from top level down. You put in all the important things and you design it 7 days at a time. And I have found that doing this has been absolutely game changer for allowing me to structure my week, structure my day. And then even when I give this, I've got an executive assistant, I give this to my executive assistant and say, okay, here's what this is what a perfect week looks like. Go out and make this as close as you possibly can. And I have found that when I do that, it allows them to have some guidance around what to say yes to, what to say no to. If you want to get access to some templates that I have, there's two ways to do that. First is send me an email. So if you send me an email, Scott, I love mortgage brokering, I'll send them to you. Or if you get on my email list, I send this stuff out all the time. So I'm creating what I believe will be the most useful email for mortgage brokers. If you go to my social account and you click on, or even on this, you'll be able to click and join my newsletter. And I will promise you that you're going to get useful stuff. And this will be one of them, these tools that I will share with you on, and plus other ones that are coming up. So even if you get this ideal work week built, you're going to be, if you can hit it 80%, you're killing it. If you can do higher than 80%, send me an email because I want to know what you're doing, because I still have not figured out how to get more than, an 80% success rate on this. But 80% of a perfect week turns out to be a very good week. It's a very profitable way to run your business. It's a very great way for you to ensure you're doing the things that matter, that you're taking care of your health, taking care of your family, your relationships. And so I would encourage you to stop, take a bit of time, walk through this exercise, design the entire week, and you're going to find that you're going to make it's going to be way less stressful for you. And you're going to have to say no to stuff. So it's okay. Say no to a few more things. That's totally fine. What I've started doing lately, because I've found that I've got competing priorities or competing tasks I need to do. I really like to batch tasks, and I find them better when I can get into a groove. So now I'm designing it by a 12-week cycle where so for instance, in a 12-week cycle, I'd have 2 weeks of the 12 weeks where I would do lots of podcast episodes. And then another week where I would be, meeting with all my staff and team members. And I can do that all in the week and get everybody's feedback. And another one where I meet with my top agents. And so the idea is that I have these themes so that I make sure that over the course of a quarter, all of the priority things that need to get done are happening. And so I've just expanded the idea of this ideal work week into creating. Now, you may not, if you're starting out, don't do that. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've just found that it's for where I'm currently at. I need to actually design a 12-week cycle, not just a 1-week cycle. But when you're starting out, if you're not doing this at all, the 1-week thing will be a game changer for you. I guarantee it. So thanks again for listening. So 2 ways you can get this. 1, send me an email, Scott, I love mortgage brokering. 2, get on my newsletter. the most useful newsletter for mortgage brokers. I promise you, I don't even like the word newsletter. I might change the name of that, but I promise you, you're going to get useful stuff, and you can get that on my social account, or you can click on this and you can get access to that. And I'll send this stuff out to you. And the last thing I want to say is if you want to check out a super cool tool that I have found that mortgage brokers love, it's called Ownwell. So ownwell.ca. What it does is allows homeowners to help your clients to monitor their home equity and buying power. And it comes from you. It's a monthly email with the open rates of 60 to 80%. And it's a fantastic way to engage your database. And you can even adopt other people's databases with it. And so this is something that's been available to the US for a long time. And it's only become to Canada recently. And there's a tool called homebot.ai for my American listeners. There's a couple other ones that are similar. And the whole idea is that it creates some very engaging conversations, as well as allowing you to adopt databases. And I'd encourage you to check them out, ownwell.ca. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.